Hello and welcome to all our viewers present here today. My name is Vedant Shinde, Youth Representative Journalist from Mimove Foundation. The depletion of the ozone layer is caused by molecules of chlorofluorocarbons in the stratosphere, broken down by the ultraviolet radiations and release chlorine atoms. Don't worry about it. I'm not such a science geek myself, but I'm pretty sure it goes somewhat like this. Certain elements that are like put forward through our various man-made gases are eventually causing the layer of Earth to actually cause certain depletions, due to which the radiations of suns is eventually putting forward an impact and causing certain harmful diseases towards the human nature, such as skin cancer, cataracts, and potential damage to some marine organisms, plants, and plastics. Well, as fascinating and simplifying as it sounds coming from me, that bit of it was quite the research for me. So, without any further delay, let me introduce our panelists for today. First off, we have Nikita Golaya, Masters in Environmental Studies and Resource Management from Terry School of Advanced Studies, New Delhi. Along with that, we have Samyukta Sethuraman, who has also done her Masters in Sustainable Development from Christ University, Bengaluru. And last but not the least, we have with us Saurabh Hanjgi, who has done his Environmental Science, Botany and Chemistry from St. Joseph's College, Bengaluru. First off, I truly appreciate you all being here with us today amongst the time of pandemic. I would truly like, I was really looking forward to looking for meeting you all in person. But nevertheless, it's pandemic. So whatever makes it work. So the first question I would like to put forward is to Nikita. Nikita, I put my first question forward to you. But before that, I want to know that one instance that actually moved you towards taking up a stream related to environmental conservation and studies. Like there's always a certain loophole, but what is that that truly inspired you? What is the one moment that inspired you towards going for the same?
Hi Vedant, thank you for having me here. So, just to give a little bit of a background about myself, I did my graduation in zoology from Delhi University. And when I was studying that, I learned a very interesting fact that all of us right now are living through a mass extinction. The previous mass extinction was the one that wiped out all the dinosaurs from the face of this earth. And right now, what we are living through one. And it completely fascinated me that going through our everyday lives, we just do not think about this fact. So many species are going extinct, and we're losing a lot of biodiversity of this planet. And going about our day-to-day lives without worrying about it too much. And that is the one turning point, I would say, in my outlook towards how I look at the planet. Is that and I realized that something needed to be done about it. So that would be the one turning point where I decided that I would want to join the field of environment and sustainability and really promote businesses into taking the sustainable route of working.
Well, that's great, Nikita. So I want to move on to my first question for the day. So my question to you is burning of fossil fuels and industrial processes constitute up to 65% of global greenhouse gas emission. Do you think we've fallen in too deep in the whole process of industrialization and development that we have totally forgotten about our environment amongst all these chaos?
Uh, well, Vedant, when the Industrial Revolution started, I could say that that was the case. Everyone was focused on economic development, getting in new innovation and technology, and moving things faster. And everything was based on how much money you would make. The countries that made more money, the countries that were industrialized made more money, and money was equated to power. And maybe it was the lack of knowledge at the time. No one could foresee the impacts the industrialization process would have on the environment and on other animals as well as the resources. But now that 100 years later into the process, that we have so much knowledge about how our actions are impacting the world, I think that now there's a sense of respect towards the environment, and a sense that we have to take care about the environment that is coming into businesses, and that is being incorporated into the way businesses are reshaping their policies for the future. What is done is sort of done. We cannot look back. We can only look back and learn from it now. We can't really do anything about it. So right now, I would say that businesses are looking towards the environment. They haven't completely forgotten about it, and they're also using technology right now as a means of sort of mitigating the effects we've had on the environment in the past. Like recently, I read an article about a company in Iceland that is extracting carbon out from the air and sort of artificially sequestering it. So they're converting carbon dioxide from the air and converting it into solid rocks of carbon, which the earth takes a lot of time to do on its own naturally. So yeah, right now, I would like to say that we've not completely forgotten about it, and it's a good thing that businesses are coming forward, taking sustainable actions towards improving the environment, and also that the government is playing governments all over the world are playing such an active part in mitigating the effects of environmental disaster.
Well, now that you speak about sustainability, I also want to bring in Samyukta into the conversation. Samyukta, it goes without saying that our textbook or even education, as a matter of fact, like asks us to reduce in some cases or even abandon the use of resources in order to have environmental gains. But some would call it too late or even use phrases as nothing's going to change. How do you feel sustainable development is going to be a game changer amongst all of these chaos?
Well, firstly, I want to thank you for having me here, and it's really my pleasure to be here. And to answer your question, I think we can answer it from like a multiple lens, or like there are multiple answers you can probably give for this particular question, because like Nikita said, what has happened has happened. It's all in the past. And while I was also growing up, being in school, college, you get to kind of be aware of the processes and the results of the processes that you're a part of. So I would say we were part of the problem, but we're also the solution right now. And given the fact that we have access to so many digital resources, especially during this pandemic, we've transformed our lifestyles into being very digital, and here we are conducting this webinar online. My point being, I think when it comes to sustainability, education, it's not just the responsibility of just specialists such as me or Nikita or Saurabh. I think it's a moral and environmental responsibility that each of us must have towards the environment. And I think that way, sustainability should also be a part of our daily lifestyles. It should not just be a mere buzzword. So yeah, that's my answer to your question. And I could go on and on, but then obviously we have to listen to the others as well. So yeah, that's from my side. Thank you.
Well, Samyukta, I want to move on with asking that on those very lines towards Saurabh. But before that, I also want to know, what is that one thing that probably inspired you to come into a field of sustainable development? What is that one thing that probably it could be a good instance, or it could probably be something that actually like scarred you, that you could have probably changed or made a difference about? What is that one thing that actually made you get into the field?
Yeah, that's a beautiful question, because when I was just listening to Nikita's experience, I got reminded of my own personal experiences as well. So I'm somebody who grew up in different cities all throughout my childhood because of my dad's profession. And over the years, I also noticed that being in different cities, the temperature, the humidity, it kind of wasn't very pleasant over the years. And it just there was no particular instance per se, because it was a collection of a lot of tiny moments along the journey. So when I started studying humanities in my high school, we were introduced to developmental organizations and the kind of programs they do. So that was when it really struck me that, oh, well, there exists a sector such as developmental, studies. And I became more curious, and being the curious person I am, I just went on and on reading about the whole processes that went behind it. And right now, pursuing my master's in sustainable development, I've come to the realization that cities are going to be the future from now on. But in order to mitigate the global challenge that we're all collectively facing, climate change, we must ensure that our cities are not only economically sustainable, but environmentally as well. So I think it was all a collection of all these tiny moments along the journey that made me really want to pursue my career in this sector, because I know for a fact that all of us here are change makers in our own ways possible. So when I have access to the education resources, why not put it to good use and make a difference while I can when I'm here? So that's perhaps what motivated me to, pursue my studies in this field.
Well, when I actually started and got the offer to actually go ahead and host this interview, I honestly thought that I was going to get a lot of flaws of an opinion from our youth change makers, but I see a lot of sense of hope amongst all this. Well, with respect to that, I have another question that comes on the very same lines of hope. My next question is to Saurabh Hanjgi. Saurabh, my question to you is with respect to the pandemic that has taken place so far. Well, do you think it's put a positive impact amongst all our people and the environment, or do you think that we are always going to come back to scratch? There is no other way to look at it.
Yeah, first of all, I want to start by being grateful to VMove Foundation for creating this opportunity for me to come and talk over here. So, as you said, the pandemic, it has brought a lot of changes in the lifestyles of people, especially when the pandemic started and people started staying at their places. Like they stopped going out, they stopped going to offices, and a work from home system was put into place. So in that moment, a lot of things changed in that period of time. So we saw a subsequent decrease in pollution, in the human effects over the environment. So these observations were made, and from these observations, people started to have positive. They started having these positive vibes in them, and they they made some changes in the environment. They tried to come up with many positive effects, positive changes in the environment. Like they wanted to uh, bring in many changes. They started thinking about sustainability. They started thinking about, as Samyukta and Nikita talked about, modernization, urbanization, and sustainability. So they started getting into those things and uh, made it a real thing and practice that in their homes. So now we have urban farming. So since we cannot go out of our houses, we could practice urban farming at our own places. We could start with terrace farming as a beginner, and then we could work on that and convert that into urban farming. And there are many other ways like aquaponics, hydroponics, like uh, which kind of is related to planting saplings without the medium of soil. So these changes in human beings brought about sustainability, and I think this will go on and on. So maybe I think a pandemic is really good for us in this way, because we can change, the environment can change. It's like a break for the environment. It's like a break for the nature, and we should be in camaraderie with the nature, because that is what is much needed in this pandemic. That's what I would say. Thank you.
That's a nice way to look at it, Saurabh. So let me get it. Correct me if I'm wrong. what you're saying is the pandemic has come close to around 1.5 year back since it's come 2019, if I'm not wrong. And since then, I think 1 year has been the time where there's been no human movement or no industrialization processes. But what truly matters, and this is a message to my audience I'd want to give, what truly matters is since the last 2 months, since restrictions have been uplifted since the last 2 months at least, I feel what you've done so far, at least in those 2 months, is the change that has been brought into people. It's the realization that we can do better. But again, moving on, I want to ask my question to Saurabh Hanji. Saurabh, my question to you is, if seen in an aspect of a timeline, we start from a point where we had no idea as to what an ozone layer even was, and then we came to a conclusion that once it started depleting, that it caused certain physical harm to human activities. And now we are at a point where that ice caps in Antarctic regions have even melted and is causing distress to our flora and fauna as well. So I want to know, what are your thoughts on this? How do you think the timeline has evolved, and do you think there can be a drastic drop amongst all of this? Do you think there can be a good significance?
Exactly. I want to make a point here. So first, let me brief up, since I'm a chemistry student, I want to brief up about what really ozone is. So ozone is a triatomic molecule of oxygen. It contains of 3 atoms of oxygen. And basically, ozone is a poisonous gas. So it is located in the stratosphere of the atmosphere. So atmospheres has different parts and segments, and these segments are differentiated as troposphere, stratosphere, mesosphere, and it goes on and on. So ozone layer basically lies in the stratosphere, and it does not lie on the surface of the Earth, mainly because it's really poisonous. And why it does not lie on the surface of the Earth is mainly because it's the density is very low, so it stays there in the atmosphere, like in the troposphere, which is around 50 to 20 kilometers away from the surface of the Earth. So what happens is the ozone layer actually protects us from the bad radiations, like the UV radiations that are incoming from the sun. Like the solar radiation contains a lot of UV rays. That's really very harmful to human health. It's really harmful to the flora and fauna of the ecosystem or the biodiversity that we have on Earth. So recently, as we see the ozone hole that has come on in Antarctica, that has been appearing. Many chemists and many scientists have discovered this. So it was first discovered by chemists in 1984, in the early 1980s, if I'm not wrong, that they observed these changes in the ozone layer depletion. And then in 1985 or 1986, the Montreal Protocol came into observation. Like they held a meeting. It's basically an organization that stopped the use of ozone depleting substances. So ozone depleting substances are basically refrigerants, coolants, aerosols, and we can call them as CFCs as well. CFCs are basically chlorofluorocarbons. And what happens is these chlorofluorocarbons, they react with the ozone, and the chlorine in the chlorofluorocarbon, it breaks and it reacts with the ozone molecule, and that ozone molecule subsequently gets decreased and it thins out. And what happens is the UV radiation from the sun easily enters through the atmosphere, and it causes a lot of problem, especially say due to the varying kinetic motion of the molecules. It starts hitting the Earth's surface. It might cause a lot of problems with humans, say cancer and cataracts, as you said, blindness. And this also leads to melting of ice caps, and melting of ice caps is leading to a lot of problems. We are seeing a rise in sea level, and global warming is also one thing actually. But this is a really a very negative thing to talk about, because this has been happening from the late 1980s. But then protocols and many recently the Kigali amendment was made by Montreal Protocol. It was one of the amendments. It belongs to the Montreal Protocol. So the Kigali agreement was made in Rwanda. Rwanda is an African country. It was made recently in 2016. So there they made an agreement that a set of countries made an agreement that they will not be using any hydrofluorocarbons or chlorofluorocarbons. Instead, they'll use other alternatives. So that's a good sign, though. And then many scientists have also observed from the past few years, like say from 2018 or from 2016, that the ozone layer is healing. So it is healing in a very, I mean, it's taking its time, but it's healing is what they say. So this is like a good news for us, and it's a good change. So 50 years is not a great, when we observe the geological time scale, 50 years is nothing. So I think by 50 years, when this all heals, will be, and we can see the technologies, the modernization, the urbanization that is taking place. So there might be some technologies which can come into picture here, where they can help in sustainable living, technologies that can help in the conservation of the environment. So with these things, we can really see a good change, and with the positive attitude of human beings, with spreading awareness as human beings, as the citizens of the country, as residents of this world, we need to bring about a change. We need to make people aware that this is not good for us, and this is what we're going through. So we need to bring in that change. Only then there will be a positive effect on people. So that is what I believe. So this is like a good news. So, but whatever the effects have been happening till now, that's really a bad case there. We could have avoided that, but due to greed of power, like Mahatma Gandhi once said, there's enough for one's need, but not for one's greed. So we need to eradicate the greed we have. We need to have a simple life. We need to go see. Now we know that air coolers or air conditioners cause a lot of freons or these chlorofluoro. They emit a lot of CFCs. So if we go for well ventilated spaces, if we have good ventilated institutions, good ventilated residential areas or ventilated buildings, so we don't have to consider having an AC air conditioner or air cooler at our home, and we can also think about alternative. We can go for renewable energies. So that would be a great thing to start off with. So with this, I would like to end my discussion. Thank you again.
Well, thank you, Saurabh. That was very insightful. But at the same time, there's also been a question running in my head this like alongside, and it's been there for quite some time. And for the very same, I want to bring in Nikita into the conversation. But what I want to know is that, do you think like human causes are the only causes that actually put forward a depletion towards the ozone layer? Because let's face it, there are certain other factors such as the volcanic eruptions or the sun's output, which is like totally out of our control. So Nikita, I want to bring you into the conversation. Do you think like all these basic factors such as volcanic eruption or sun's output plays a major role, or do you think that's like the least of our concerns right now?
Of course, the natural processes play a major role in, like you said, like volcanoes. When a volcano erupts, a large amount of pollutants are emitted, like sulfur dioxide and a lot of particulate matter as well. So but the question here not really is that do they have an impact? They have a significant impact, but what can we do about it? Can we stop a volcano from happening? No, we cannot. So the only thing really that we can control are our actions, which are sort of accelerating accelerating climate change, and climate change in turn is having a lot of effects on the world as well. So that is one thing that we should focus on. The world doesn't work in a sense that if there's it's not a linear graph between, let's say, X amount of pollutant and the effects that has. So it's not like if we keep increasing the concentration of a pollutant in the environment, the effects will increase proportionally. There is always a threshold point for most of the things, as we have seen. So we can keep increasing it until a point where the environment sort of gives in, and then a cascade of actions get started, which is then very difficult to control. So it's better that we act now before reaching that threshold point, rather than wait for nature. We've all seen like how destructive nature can be. So rather than wait for that tipping point, rather than wait for us getting to that tipping point, we should just take an action now when we're still on the safer side of things in relation to many species, many other activities. The things that are functionally extinct or actually extinct, we cannot help. But the species that we can save, we must. The resources that we can save, we must. And just use them judiciously, and just be conscious about our actions, that they do not impact the environment as much, and we do not accelerate the natural processes as well. This will also give the future generations time to come up with maybe technological solutions to our problem. If we don't do anything about it, we're not even giving the future generations opportunity to innovate and then mitigate climate change. So yeah, that's what I would like to say on this.
So Nikita has made it pretty clear that if there's anyone who's going to be making the compromise, it's going to be us living organisms, and the nature is going to do what it has to, if I'm not wrong, Nikita.
Yeah.
But moving on, I would like to say that we have come to the end of today's session. But before that, I would like to ask all my panelists as to what is the one message they want to leave all our viewers with today. And I would like to start with Samyukta. Samyukta, I got 30 seconds. Let's go.
Thank you. In order to just answer your question, I would say be aware of the actions you take on a daily basis, be it in your personal life or professional life. And secondly, just read up and just educate yourself. That's probably the first step you can take towards being more environmentally aware and contribute your part.
Well, now I'd want to come to Saurabh. Saurabh, your one message you want to leave our viewers with today. You got 30 seconds. Let's go.
Yeah, what I would say is like people should be more aware of the environment, more aware of the nature around them. So they should have a sense of respect. They should have a sense of care. They should have a sense of care towards the environment and the nature, so that they can bring in some positive changes. They can have a positive attitude towards the environment. So this is my message for today.
To Nikita. Nikita, your final message you want to leave our audience with today. You got 30 seconds. Let's go.
I would just like to continue with what Samyukta and Saurabh have said, and just give you little examples of how you can be more sustainable in your everyday life. Number one, segregate your waste. If you segregate everything, your dry waste and your wet waste, you contribute to a lot of ease in the process going forward. If your waste is segregated, that makes the management much more easier and reduces the impact that your daily household waste will have on the environment in the future. Another thing you can do is go for sustainable brands. So a brand that is conscious about the environment during its production and marketing and sales will, if you shop for such brands, even though they might be a little more expensive than the brands that are not that sustainable and leave a significant impact on the environment, if you are willing as a consumer to bear that extra cost to save the environment, you will be sort of contributing to a change in the way a business sees itself. And that would encourage a lot of businesses to go sustainable. So take these little steps on your level, and you can contribute towards the recovery of the environment. Thank you.
Well, with that, this was to the voices of our youth. And also our session has come to an end. First off, I would like to say how truly I appreciate you all being here today. Thank you, Saurabh, Nikita, and Samyukta for having made it here today. And most importantly, I would also like to thank our viewers for joining in today. Bringing change showcases itself to be a complex act. But what we don't realize is every move we make in contribution to goodwill is nothing but an act of kindness to someone out there. This International Day for the Preservation of Ozone Layer, let's not make it about our well-living, but let's take steps for us to grow our planet by leaving our fate in the hands of the future for a better tomorrow. And here was a little something for you all to think about. Thank you And before you leave, do subscribe to our YouTube channel for updates on more such inspirational talk series. And follow us on our social media handouts for the same. With this, there's only one thing left to say. This has been your host, Vedant Shinde, signing off.